why they're stealing their money.
Yeah.
We'll resume debate once we're done, once the debate resumes later on this afternoon. For now, we'll go to the statements by members. Déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Brampton Centre.
Like many immigrants, I came to Canada 20 years back. Canada gave me opportunity to establish my successful lobbying business. Now I want to thank all constituents of my Brampton Centre for giving me privilege to represent them in the House of Commons. I also like to thank my friends, my immediate extended family members, and all volunteers for their contribution in the successful campaign. Mr. Speaker, Brampton Centre is one of the most diverse ridings in Canada, and I am proud to represent the same in the House. I pledge to work hard for every constituent. I also look forward working with every member of this House for the betterment of my riding as well as for the betterment of Canada. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, on this National Optimist Club Day, I want to take the opportunity to recognize the tremendous work done by this organization, whose members work daily to create a bright future by inspiring the best of our young people in their communities and within themselves. For 90 years, the Optimist Movement has become one of the most important volunteer organizations that recognizes the value of all children and that promotes their full development. I take advantage of this opportunity today to highlight the extraordinary work of the Optimist Clubs in my region, including those of Baie-Saint-Paul, the Malbaie, Île d'Orléans, and the Optimist Club of Côte-de-Beaupré for the huge work that they are doing with our youth. They remain very involved within our communities, and their dedication is remarkable. Thank you to all of the members and volunteers that allow the Optimist Movement to carry on and to have a great impact on the lives of our youth. I feel privileged to be able to work with them and to be part of this movement. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much.
Today I am pleased to have Coral McMillan shadow me as one of the young women participating in the Brock University Women in the House program. This program aims to better acknowledge and increase female participation in all levels of government. We've come a long way since Agnes MacPhail was elected as the first female MP in Canada in 1921, and today we celebrate having Canada's first gender-based cabinet. I'm proud to be one of 88 women elected to the House. Je suis très fière d'être.
I'm very proud to be one of the 88 women in the House.
We have a long way to go. Young women like Coral and Emma and Julia Mogus from my riding, founders of Books with No Bounds and passionate advocates for our Indigenous communities, must be encouraged to become leaders in government, business, and in their communities.
The Honourable Member, Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the initial project of installing community mailboxes in the Rouyn-Noranda, I was convinced it was a bad idea. But now I can assure you that it was not only a bad idea, it was a disaster. Complaints have flooded in since these boxes were installed. The installation locations were inappropriate or too far, bad locks that froze, keys that opened more than one box, snow within the compartments, boxes buried under the snow for lack of removal, and icy ground around the boxes. And of course, now there are complaints about even getting in touch with the complaint service of Canada Post. Faced with such a ridiculous situation, here's a list of even more ridiculous solutions proposed to me: putting heated domes above the boxes, providing tunnel-digging dogs in order to be able to get to the box, building giant igloos over the boxes, do away with winter. But the simplest solution in the end would be quite...
Mr. Speaker, a dedicated public servant and influential
woman in Northwest Territories, retired from her position as chair of the Inuvialuit Regional Council Corporation last month. Nellie Cornier held this elected position for 20 years. This continuous endorsement from the Inuvialuit is truly remarkable. Nellie has many remarkable career highlights. She was elected Premier of the Northwest Territories in 1991, meaning she holds 2 records. Mr. Speaker, Nellie was the second female Premier and the first Aboriginal Premier in our country. Nellie was also made an Officer of the Order of Canada, was inducted into the Aboriginal Hall of Fame, and has been awarded honorary doctorates in law from Lakehead, Carleton, and the University of Toronto. Mr. Speaker, from the oil companies in Calgary to the boardrooms in Ottawa and throughout the North, the single name Nellie commands respect and admiration. I wish Ms. Cornier the best of luck and happiness in the future. Thank you.
The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to get up and say thank you to the constituents of the riding of Prince Albert for re-electing me for a 3rd time. It is a great honour to serve the people of Prince Albert. After all, Mr. Speaker, it is the riding of the great John Diefenbaker, who served from 1953 to 1979, and these are big shoes to fill. I'd like to thank my entire campaign team for their commitment for my re-election. I couldn't have done it without their support and advice. I also like to thank my many friends and family who stood by me and gave it that extra mile to push it across the finish line. Mr. Speaker, Prince Albert is a beautiful riding. It has abundance in agriculture, forestry, lakes and rivers. It truly is God's country. Mr. Speaker, I am blessed to represent them. Thank you.
The honourable member for Miramichi-Grand Lake. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to share with the House the courage of a young girl in my riding of Miramichi-Grand Lake and the big heart of her neighbours in Baie-Sainte-Anne. The misfortunes of Alyssa Shipley started 2 years ago when she was only 9 years old and became ill with strep throat. She was transferred to the IWK hospital in Halifax, and following that, her 4 limbs were amputated, and she spent a year in rehab. People in the community mobilized, and under the leadership of Marie-Paul Thériault, a retired teacher, acquired a residence that was not being used by the RCMP and made it accessible for little Alyssa, with donations in time and materials from the region with a value of over $150,000. This demonstrates, Mr. Speaker, that the distances between people in rural communities may be long, but these people are the closest to each other than everywhere else. The honourable member for Mount Royal.
Draw the attention of the House to an outstanding initiative that I am proud to support. The Foundation for the Compulsory Study of Genocide in Schools, led by my constituent Heidi Berger, has collected over 1,200 signatures on a petition urging the Quebec government to add education about the horrors of genocide to the school curriculum across the province. La semaine prochaine,
Next week, I will personally go to the National Assembly to accompany the Foundation in the tabling of their petition.
Often said, the Holocaust did not begin in the concentration camps. It began with words, the ferocious anti-Jewish and racist lexicon of the Nazi regime. It is essential that students across Canada be educated about all of the different genocides of human history in order to make sure that never again becomes a reality.
The honourable member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a proud Albertan, and I take tremendous pride in our resourceful and resilient province. A province, though, that seems to have been forgotten in the first 100 days of this Liberal government. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to direct the Prime Minister, his government, in particular 4 Liberal MPs from Alberta, as to where the West is. Mr. Speaker, it's that way. For the foreclosures of my constituency have a real meaning and result in families uprooting their lives. They've lost their jobs, Mr. Speaker, and can no longer afford to pay the bills. They can't simply hang in there. The hardworking constituents in Edmonton Riverbend elected me to stand up for them in this House. This is why I'd like to point out that a previous Liberal Prime Minister was told that the West wants in. I'm here to tell this Prime Minister that the West needs in.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you,
Speaker, I was pleased to welcome so many people from the North and join them at the Northern Lights Conference here in Ottawa last week. The Labrador North and Baffin Regional Chamber of Commerce hosted a premier event showcasing business, industry, culture, and history in the northern regions of Nunavut, Nunatsiavut, and Labrador. I was pleased to participate along with my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Nunavut, and many other colleagues in the House of Commons. I want to express my deep gratitude and thanks for the Chambers for organizing a successful conference profiling Aboriginal people, resource development, and opportunities for communities in this region of the North, where beauty and opportunity knows no bounds, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, this being World Cancer Day, I would like to draw the attention of the House to the efforts of a remarkable man in my riding, Matt Kelso. Matt is a young man in his 20s who's now recovering from his battle with brain cancer. This has not stopped him from trying to make Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge a safer community. We have fabulous and capable paramedics in my riding, Mr. Speaker. Matt knows this all too well. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is that there are only 2 ambulances to serve the needs of 100,000. This is unacceptable. Matt started a petition to increase the number of ambulances because he knows that both ambulances are often busy at the same time. This can lead to long waits for those in emergency situations. He knows the next time he calls for help, his life could depend on it. With every signature that Matt collects, he raises awareness and continues to fight to make our riding safer. Thank you, Matt.
The member for Simcoe Grey.
I'm proud to rise in the chamber today in recognition of World Cancer Day.
World Cancer Day unites the world's population in the fight against cancer. It aims to save millions of preventable deaths each year by raising awareness and education about the disease, pressing people across the world to get involved. Breast cancer is the most common form of cancer among Canadian women, and many of us are touched by this devastating disease. Personally, my mother, Lynn, lost her battle to breast cancer in 1989 and is one of the reasons I'm an ardent supporter of the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation, hosting an annual fundraiser every year in my riding of Simcoe Grey, where hundreds of local volunteers get involved.
On February 4th, World Cancer Day, let us spread the word, raise awareness, and take action against cancer.
Honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, historian David Mitchell describes former BC Premier Bill Bennett as one of the most important premiers in the province's history. Sadly, Bill passed away December 3rd last year. Elected to the BC legislature in 1973, he then served as Premier for 10 years. He was a member of Canada's Privy Council and received the Order of British Columbia. Bill was born and raised in Kelowna, where he was a community builder and entrepreneur. His business interests eventually included real estate, the family hardware store, an appliance store, a ranch, and a sawmill. Bill brought Expo 86, SkyTrain, the Vancouver Trade and Convention Centre, and the Coquihalla Highway to BC and set Vancouver on course to become the world-class city it is today. He was a family man, married to Audrey for 60 years, father of Brad, Kevin, Stephen, and Greg, grandfather of 8, and a proud great-grandfather as well. Bill will be greatly missed and remembered fondly by many.
Honourable member for Vancouver East.
When the Komogatamaroo arrived in Vancouver 102 years ago, it was not allowed to dock in the Burrard Inlet. The government forced the ship to depart under the Discriminatory Continuous Passage Act. When the ship arrived back in India, 20 passengers were killed. The descendants of those who were on the Komogatamaroo deserve closure. The community, along with the NDP, have long called for a meaningful apology to be made in Parliament. Successive governments have failed to do so. In 2014, the now Prime Minister, at an event in Surrey, organized by the Professor Mohan Singh Memorial Foundation, promised that he would make a formal apology in Parliament within the first 90 days of a Liberal government's mandate. It's now more than 100 days, and we're still waiting. My motion on the order paper calls for action. I call on the government to build on the hard work of the former NDP MP Jaspreet Sindhu to finally bring justice and healing to the community.
The honourable member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Liberals voted against our motion to support the Energy East pipeline. My riding, Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner in southern Alberta, has been greatly impacted by the recent downturn in the oil industry. Over 100,000 Albertans have lost their jobs, but this is much bigger than local politics. It's about the entire Canadian economy. This is one time when the Prime Minister doesn't need to favour Quebec politicians over Alberta. Quebecers are with us. They need jobs and a stable economy too. Don't talk to me about social license. Countless Canadians desperate for work, desperate to make ends meet, is all the social license that you will need. The Conservative Party will always stand up for Canada's natural resources sector. The pipeline is the most effective way, it's the most efficient way, and it's the most environmentally responsible way to get our energy resources to market. So what's the holdup? Get that pipeline going, get Albertans back to work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, as already noted in this House, today marks World Cancer Day. This day aims to reflect on how we can make a difference in the global fight against cancer. Cancer affects everyone in different ways. Last year, I was also diagnosed with cancer, forcing me to take a leave from my parliamentary duties. After almost 6 months of treatment and with great support from family, friends, and colleagues in this House, I am proud to once again stand in this place. We have taken the power to take various actions to reduce the impact that cancer can cause on individuals, families, and communities. It is a chance to reflect on what you can do to either by making a pledge or taking action. Today, I invite my colleagues to participate in a global No Hair Selfie initiative to show their solidarity with cancer patients from all over the world. Luckily, it will not require you to actually shave your head. However, you can do so virtually with your No Hair Selfie photo by using an app that is available online. It is a fun way to show your support for this cause. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales.
Oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actuellement, le Port du Québec contribue à maintenir 8 000 emplois dans la grande région du Québec. Les projets du terminal de croisière et de la promenade du Foulon, appuyés par notre parti en campagne, sont importants.
Excuse me, sorry, we don't have...
Is the interpretation working? Is the interpretation working? You may recommence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, the Port of Quebec contributes to maintaining 8 million jobs in the Greater Quebec City area. Decisive projects such as the cruise ship terminal and the Promenade du Foulon are important for the prosperity of the port. Currently, the port is still waiting a response from the Liberal government. Can the Prime Minister assure the people of Quebec that he will not drag his feet and jeopardize good jobs that are important for our country? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, we recognize the importance of the Port of Quebec, which is an important port along the St. Lawrence River, and which is part of the province of Quebec's maritime strategy. It is a port that is significant, both in terms of delivery of cargo and bulk shipments, and as my colleague mentioned, for the cruise ship industry. So we are examining this request very closely, and we will be making a decision in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yesterday in Edmonton, the Prime Minister was asked a very direct question. His response or his non-response was very troubling. Troubling to every resource worker that's laid off, all of their families that are worrying about where their next paycheck will come from. So he couldn't bring himself to say yes yesterday, so I'm going to ask him here one more time. If job-creating energy projects get through his new process at the National Energy Board, will the Liberal cabinet also approve them? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we find it pretty ironic that the members from the opposite side who weren't able to get resources to Tidewater over 9 years are talking about what we're trying to do. We are looking for a way to actually get resources to Tidewater. We've been very clear about this point. We are working hard to get the license required to do that, and we are convinced our approach will make a real difference for people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador, and across this country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here's the problem. He already has a record of blocking job-creating energy projects. Northern Gateway was approved with 204 conditions, but then the Prime Minister killed it with his unilateral transportation ban off the West Coast. So that's his record. It would do a lot more for investor confidence and public confidence if the government would actually stand behind their own process. So I ask again, if new projects get through this new process, will they be approved by the Liberal government, yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to the honourable member, here's the real problem. The real problem was they weren't able to do anything over 9 years in getting resources to market. On what basis do they have any credibility in asking us how we're going to do it? We are going to take an approach that's actually going to get resources to Tidewater. We're going to make a difference for the people who need us to make a difference across this country, creating real economic growth through getting our resources to market.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The least we can say is that the Minister of Transport was vague when he talked about the funding of the Port of Quebec. But they're not just the Port of Quebec authorities waiting for news from this government. The National Optics Institute of Quebec is a key industry that generates a great deal of jobs in terms of applied research and sciences. The National Optics Institutes needs a response by March 31st. Will it hear from this government by that time?
The Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for the question. I understand the great work done by this institute. It does great work to commercialize very innovative ideas to market to help SMEs, Mr. Speaker. We've had a very productive conversation with them, and we'll provide them with a timely response with regards to funding, Mr. Speaker. We understand the importance of growing the economy. We understand the importance of innovation and creating jobs, Mr. Speaker, and we'll continue to work with this institute and other institutes across the country.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Yes, empty rhetoric. We need commitments because there's not just the Port of Quebec, there's also Laval University that needs funding for its Northern Institute. Mr. Speaker, those are pledges made by the Liberal government and we still haven't heard anything from them. The people of Quebec City want answers. They've been sworn in 3 months ago and it's been 0, 0, 0. When will the government deliver the goods for the people of Quebec City?
The Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, our #1 priority is the economy. We will make investments in aerospace, automotive, byproducts, biopharmaceuticals, business services, chemicals and plastics, digital media, financial services, food and beverage, media devices, mining industries, oil and gas, renewable energy, retail, software. Mr. Speaker, I can continue to go on and on. The bottom line is we'll grow the economy and create jobs.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Canadians learned today that it's upwards of 3,000 Indigenous people who suffered abuse in residential schools who have had their claims denied because of a technicality. It was the Justice Department that came up with this loophole and argued against these victims in court. This is contrary to the spirit of reconciliation and a violation of the Residential Schools Agreement. Will the Justice Minister instruct her officials to back down? Will she also apologize for this tactic and provide the compensation these survivors are entitled to?
The Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member across the way for the question and certainly the passion that he expresses with respect to Indigenous people. I think without question I share that same passion, as does our government, to ensure that we implement the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement in a timely way and in a fair way. And as the Minister of Justice, I take very seriously my commitments to follow through with our commitments in the election, to ensure that we're compliant with the Charter, and to ensure that there's fairness. And I've instructed my hardworking and dedicated officials to come up with options to remedy this situation, working with the Minister of Indigenous.
Member for Outremont.
I thank the Minister for her answer, but she says in a timely way. Does she not think these victims have already waited enough, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the government signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That adds up hundreds of millions of dollars of costs, according to the study that was just completed, to the drug insurance scheme. Here's a question for the government. Does it intend, yes or no, to compensate the provinces for the increase in fees that will be imposed on their drug insurance systems? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member of Outremont for his question. We are going to study the TPP before this Parliament through committees and in consultation with Canadians. Obviously, we will study the impact on the various sectors, and we will examine not only the challenges but the solutions should we decide to ratify the agreement. Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government has signed the TPP, negotiated in secret by the Conservatives without even having done any economic verification. People fear that they are going to lose billions of dollars by giving the United States the upper hand with regard to intellectual property. The founder of BlackBerry even said that this is the worst policy ever adopted, referring to the TPP. Why is the Prime Minister insisting on signing an agreement that we know will hurt our jobs and innovation in Canada? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member of Outremont for his question once again. Yes, we are going to study the impact of the TPP. That is what we have done with through consultations since October 19th and during the election campaign. We are going to continue to do so through the International Trade Committee under this Parliament. The important thing is signing the accord is one thing, but it is the ratification will be something that is more important. And we will not do that until we have studied it thoroughly. The Honourable Member. Does the member often sign agreements with which he is not in agreement?
And accountability. The Liberals signed on to a trade deal negotiated in secret with no economic impact study. He just admitted it. He wants to do the study after signing, and no mandate from Canadians to sign. Now that they have signed, further changes are impossible. Since they're gambling with Canadian jobs, perhaps it was appropriate that they signed it in a casino. Will the government admit they have just signed away any possibility of making changes to the wrong-headed Conservative trade deal?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, it's true that the previous government negotiated this accord in secret, but it's also true that the Honourable Member from Outremont decided to not support the agreement without having even read it. We have promised the Canadian public. We promised the Canadian public during the election that we would study the agreement, we would look at all aspects of the agreement in depth, and that is precisely, Mr. Speaker, what we have done and what we are going to continue to do.
The member from Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the first Finance Committee meeting today, on our suggestion, it was agreed that we do some pre-budget consultations, bringing in witnesses from across Canada. The suggestion was made as well, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Finance appear at the committee. My question to the Minister is this: will he take the invitation and appear before the committee for pre-budget consultations?
Great question.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, 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 order. Order. Let's stay calm here, folks. Let's stay cool. It's Thursday. We're almost at Friday. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor. Please listen.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for her question. I can tell you that I have done an enormous number of pre-budget consultations across this country. I mean, I've traveled from coast to coast. We've seen people from all sectors of the economy. I've listened more than any Minister of Finance has ever listened in the history of this country. We've had 3,500 budget submissions.
The Honourable Member for Milton.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I found that really funny. It's going to be hard for me. Kind of weird. So one of the things that I did note in committee, though, today, Mr. Speaker, in all fairness, was we don't want pre-budget consultations at the committee to hold up the budget. Canadians want a budget. They want a plan. They want to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So my question to the Minister of Finance is pretty simple. Do you feel like you have the ability to actually make a decision and tell us when the budget will be?
Great question.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question. I'd like to remind her what happened last year when the budget was actually announced far after the traditional season.
That's right.
This year, what we're doing is we are working to listen to Canadians as best we can. We've heard from thousands upon thousands of Canadians. We've had 3,500 submissions. We owe it to Canadians to actually go through those submissions. We are doing so, and we will get to the budget as expeditiously as we can, recognizing our challenging economic environment.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Lérable. Mr. Speaker, we would like to know what the Minister of Finance has to say. Today, the House is debating on a motion regarding Finance Canada and its Fiscal Monitor Report, which states that the Conservative government left a surplus, but the Liberal government continues to deny the reality. Will the Minister of Finance lead by example, stand up and tell the House he has confidence in his own officials? Will he come out and say that the government inherited a surplus of $1 billion? Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the only people who believe that the former Conservative government left a surplus are the Conservatives themselves. But Canadians know the truth. Let us be clear. The government posted a deficit for 2015-16, and that is due to the action and inaction of the former government. That's a fact. Honourable Member for Mégantic-Lérable. Mr. Speaker, Canadians support critical infrastructure spending, but few Canadians support unnecessary deficits to pay for Liberal pet projects. We know that as deficits climb, trust in the government's ability to manage slides. Mr. Speaker, every indication is that this government is on track to exceed a $20 billion deficit. Can the Finance Minister please tell this House that this is simply not true? How big will the Liberal deficit be, Mr. Speaker? Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it is particularly ironic that members from a party that inherited a $13 billion surplus from a Liberal government in 2006 and then added $150 billion in debt to Canadians are talking to us about this. On top of that, they did it while creating the lowest rate of growth since the Great Depression, maybe because they spent the money on things like gazebos. We have a different plan. We are going to spend on productive assets that can help our country to do better in the future.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that after having campaigned to the detriment of wealthier Canadians and hiking their taxes, we learned that the Liberal government of New Brunswick isn't working, that the government's revenues are just not there. When they raise taxes of all citizens, wealth cannot be created. So why does this government, why does the Minister of Finance continue to seek to hike Canadians' taxes? Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to say how much I appreciate the question from the honourable member, because it provides me with an opportunity to remind all the people here that we actually lowered taxes on 9 million Canadians. As of January 1st this year, 9 million Canadians have more money in their pocket. Now, it's true that we raised taxes on a very small proportion of Canadians that perhaps the honourable member is talking about. We recognize that we've helped the vast majority of people in this country.
The honourable member for Beauce.
Class Canadians need Liberal governments to get out of the way and not raising their taxes. That's simple. If you keep raising taxes, you get fewer revenue and fewer jobs. When will the finance minister realize, when he will realize that taxing Canadians it is not a solution for prosperity in this country?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians elected a new government on October 19th. They recognized that we had a plan. We had a plan to deal with low growth through bringing forward a new approach. We reduced taxes on the middle class, which will stimulate the economy while helping 9 million Canadians. We're going to help the most vulnerable people in this country by giving them a Canada Child benefit. We are going to stimulate the economy through infrastructure investments that can make a real long-term difference in productivity for this country.
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Trade Minister just signed the TPP, which will cost tens of thousands of good jobs across Canada. This deal was negotiated in secret, and many Canadians still aren't aware of the details. But the more they learn, the more they oppose the TPP. Maybe that's the reason the minister rushed to sign it without consulting Canadians and without any study of the economic impacts. How are Canadian workers supposed to trust in consultations with a minister that is in such a rush to sign away their jobs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question. We signed the agreement precisely to give us the time to look at the accord, to look at the treaty in depth, to study it, to get the proper studies done, to do this work through our parliamentary committee. It's ratification that's important, Mr. Speaker. We have not taken a decision on ratification yet. We signed it in order to give us the time to look at this treaty properly.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Well, the reality is that the TPP is a threat to our economy. And in Windsor, Tecumseh, and Essex County, we've already suffered hard blows to the auto sector, and we know, don't dismiss our concerns. We need meaningful consultation. The auto sector supports more than 120,000 good jobs in our province. But the Trade Minister, back in 2008, wanted to let the Big Three go bankrupt. And now she signed a bad deal that puts our auto jobs at risk again.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
I'd like to thank the member opposite, and I do appreciate the passion she's demonstrated, Mr. Speaker. The bottom line is we understand the importance of the automotive sector. It actually creates 500,000 direct and indirect jobs in Ontario, Mr. Speaker. That is why I went to Detroit to meet with the global heads of the OEMs to talk about investments in Canada, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be using the Automotive Innovation Fund, the Automotive Supplier Innovation Fund, to attract investments, to create jobs in this very important sector, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Red Deer-Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Immigration and Refugee Board website states, the reappointment process for IRB members will continue to reflect a performance evaluation consistent with the merit-based competency criteria. The Minister will continue to recommend the reappointment of members after taking note of the IRB chairperson's recommendations concerning performance and operational needs. Can the Government House Leader tell us, for the reappointed IRB members he has politically intimidated to resign, what specific problems with their performance were identified?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we've said over and over again that the problem with the performance was the previous government's attempt
at 5 minutes to midnight to appoint a whole bunch of people to jobs that took effect after they lost the election. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a case of projection. The real scandal is on that side of the House, and they're somehow trying to project it over here.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
This is outrageous. This is political interference in the courts. Is there any court in Canada that can escape the reach of this new Liberal government? No one has ever done this before. No one's even had the gall to attempt something like this before. Every minister in the past who's interfered with these tribunals has resigned. When's he going to get to it?
And why is he laughing?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Again, Mr. Speaker, what a surprise to hear a member from that party speaking about attempting to intimidate a court. Canadians were shocked and international jurists were shocked when that former government tried to intimidate publicly the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, and that's something that we'll never do.
Order. The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, when the Government House Leader was asked whether he and the Cabinet complied with the law by voting 4 times last November 5th, he said, "I want to assure the House and the member that at all times, everyone on this side complied with all legislation." But Canadian press reported on November 5th that Liberal MPs chose unanimously to defer a decision on the rules, and the Government House Leader is reported as saying, "We didn't think it was appropriate to vote." Can he explain this contradiction? Did he and his Cabinet colleagues vote 4 times in accordance with the law, yes or no?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the member is seeking to confuse 2 issues. The statute to which he referred refers to a caucus vote. Now, Mr. Speaker, a caucus vote is different than a cabinet vote, and the member has been in cabinet, and he knows the cabinet doesn't vote. So what he's trying to do is phrase a question to make it properly the business of the government when he knows very well that we answered that question after our first caucus meeting in November.
The member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, government ministers at all times must comply with the law, whether they are in caucus or out. The government doesn't get to pick and choose which laws they get to follow and which laws are appropriate for them to follow. They must follow the law. The rule of law is the most sacrosanct principle of our democracy. I encourage members opposite to Google Parliament of Canada Act, Section 49.
The member's an experienced member. He knows that props are not allowed in the House, so I'd ask him not to hold things up. We don't hold up any props, no matter what they are. The member knows that. I'd let it go on.
Mr. Speaker, I encourage members opposite to Google Parliament of Canada Act, read Section 49, and conclude themselves whether or not they follow the law on November 5th. My question is for the Attorney General. What is she going to do to uphold the rule of law and ensure that ministers acted in accordance with Section 49?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, you know very well that the Minister of Justice acts every day to uphold the rule of law. That's a fundamental responsibility that she takes very seriously. We're proud of the extraordinary way she does that, and the honourable member can be assured at all times, ministers, members of the caucus, and surely he would agree all members of Parliament uphold the rule of law.
The honourable member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Quebec company Rona was sold to an American giant company. Rona employs 23,000 workers, not including those at the many suppliers, but the government at the same time is signing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This agreement will cost us 60,000 good jobs, threaten our family farms, and accelerate the takeovers of our businesses. So why is the government signing an agreement that will attack our jobs and our dairy farms? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for her question. As I just said in English and in French, we will sign this agreement to give us the time to study it, as we should in Parliament before a committee. And if we ever sign the agreement, we will make sure that the sectors affected are taken into account. This is the commitment we made, and we will keep it. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, when the government signs something, it is because it approves of it, it agrees with it. Everyone knows that, except the Liberal government. Yesterday, Quebecers woke up to bad news, and that was that Rona had been sold to Americans. The workers don't know what's going to happen, but the executives will collect $40 million in stock options. Will the minister commit to making public the mandatory review of this foreign takeover? And if so, will it be tabled here in the House? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Economic Development.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the concerns raised by the member opposite, and that is why the Investment Canada Act is very, very clear. Any transaction over $600 million automatically triggers a net benefit analysis. We have the resource and process in place to do that, Mr. Speaker. The Competition Bureau will also examine it from their perspective, Mr. Speaker. The shareholders have to look at it, Mr. Speaker. But the bottom line is any decision that we make will be in the best interest of Canadians and Quebecers.
The Honourable Member for Moncton Review DDF.
Safety officers put their lives on the line to keep us safe. Yet all too often they can't access the support they need to cope with the trauma experience that they live. The results can be devastating. 39 first responders died last year from suicide. Hundreds are affected by mental health crisis or operational stress injuries every year. Can the Minister of Public Safety update this House on his commitment to help public safety officers and their families deal with the threat of operational stress injuries?
For public safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to tell the House that this past week, dozens of leading experts, including those from the front line, met at the University of Regina to discuss a national strategy on post-traumatic stress injuries. My parliamentary secretary and I participated. First responders, those we asked to stand in harm's way to keep Canadians safe, rightfully deserve the highest level of care and support. The Minister of Health and I are mandated to ensure that that is in fact the case. We're grateful for all the national support and enthusiasm for that effort.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have been all over the map on the fight against ISIS. The Defence Minister said and suggested that we're going to stop ISIS from spreading in Libya. The Minister of Global Affairs said, no, we're not. The Foreign Minister said Canada will focus on improving security in Jordan and Lebanon. And the Defence Minister said, no, we're going to stay in Iraq. Finally, when the Defence Minister was asked, what is the Liberals' anti-ISIS plan, he said, go ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's in Rome. Well, now the Minister is back from Rome. Has he given his Defence Minister his marching orders?
Hear, hear. The Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, contrary to the former government, this government will act together on this issue to fight terrorism. It's why we work very hard to have an integrated plan with the Minister of Defense. We did a great job. The Minister of International Development, we did a great job, and I did my best as well, Mr. Speaker.
Excellent.
And with that, we'll work in complementarity with our allies, the coalition, to fight this awful terrorist group, and we will do it courageously and with efficacy.
The member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, again, there's no plan. Mr. Speaker, ISIS is a jihadi terrorist organization that is committing mass atrocities against religious and ethnic minorities. These are terrorists who believe in a dangerously radicalized version of Islam. The Liberals are constantly rationalizing their behavior and making excuses for ISIS. And now the Defence Minister is blaming climate change for ISIS. Does the Defence Minister actually believe that climate change creates jihadi terrorists?
And the Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, as we know, the complexities of conflict, it takes a I'm happy to answer the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the complexity of conflict, you have to look at many different aspects of what causes it. And when it comes to ISIL, Taliban, Boko Haram, and the atrocities that they commit, we have to be smart about it to making sure that these atrocities are not committed again. And we're going to take the time to make sure that we get this plan right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlevoix-Outremont. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask my question in French to see if we can get an answer. For days, we've been calling on the Minister of Defense to say what the plan will be to combat ISIL. He said that it was the Foreign Affairs Minister who was in charge, and he was then in Rome. Now he's back. So can we know what the plan will be? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I was in Rome, where I took part in a meeting with the coalition members. And I explained to the coalition that Canada would be a strong and determined partner with the other members. The plan will be integrated. It was very well received. I can't give details. And the Prime Minister will do it here in Canada and tell Canadians. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, for weeks the Minister of Defence has spread confusion, and we still don't know how we are going to be fighting these terrorists. We don't need to know the reasons, but we need solutions. The minister is confused when he talks about why terrorism has arisen. Can he tell us how climate change helps terrorists hold their knives to cut heads off and put bombs in place?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for that question. And the complexity of conflict and the horrible the atrocities that terrorists commit around the world, we have to be smarter in this fight because the threats are also increasing. And I will be taking the time to making sure that we get the right capabilities into the right areas at the right time so that we can fight this terrorist threat. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Speaker, prescription drug prices in Canada are already the second highest in the world. Wow. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership will increase the cost of prescription medicines even more. A new study released this week estimates the TPP will add over $600 million to drug costs in Canada. Mr. Speaker, too many Canadians already can't afford to purchase their medications. We need action to lower prices, not drive them up. So why is this government signing on to an agreement that will increase drug costs for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for his question, and I agree with him that Canadians pay far too much for prescription drugs, and we do in fact pay the second highest per capita costs in the world. Part of my mandate is to address the rising costs of drugs to make sure that prescription medicine is affordable and available to Canadians who need it. We intend to do that. We have a number of mechanisms by which we will do that. We have already taken steps in that regard, and I will continue to address this issue.
The honourable member for Elmwood, Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government notoriously mismanaged the temporary foreign worker program and allowed abuse to flourish. It meant downward pressure on wages and working conditions for Canadian workers while encouraging the exploitation of foreign workers. Now the TPP is going to make this worse. Employers won't even have to show that they couldn't hire Canadians to do the job before bringing temporary foreign workers in. And I'm wondering if the Minister of Employment will stand today in the House and urge her government not to ratify the TPP unless changes are made to this clause to ensure it's not just bringing the TFW back to Canada through the back door.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. In our consultations thus far on the TPP, we have heard opinions for, we have seen studies for, we have heard opinions against, and have had representations against. We are taking all of them into consideration. That will be the work of the committee. That will be a decision made in front of this Parliament, and it will be this Parliament that decides whether or not we ratify the TPP, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's time for the government to clarify its foreign policy positions, given the confusion and contradictions coming from the Liberals. On one hand, the Foreign Minister has said that Canada will break from our Conservative government's principled positions on Russia and its illegal occupation of Ukraine. On the other hand, the Liberal MP for Etobicoke Centre said in Kiev this week there is no change in Canadian policy on Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, exactly who speaks
on behalf of Liberal foreign policy.
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our position is very clear. It's only my colleague who's a bit confused. So I will try to clarify again for him. So indeed, the support for Canada for Ukraine is solid and will remain. Our friendship for Ukraine is not a matter of party. It's not a matter of government. It's a friendship between two countries that will remain. Our ability to help Ukraine will be improved, though, because instead of snubbing Russia and not speaking to them, we'll speak to Russia and we'll tell them what we think, how much is wrong, what they are doing to Ukraine, as the other countries are doing. Our U.S. letting down.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Russia has failed to implement any of its commitments under the Minsk agreement with Ukraine. Fighting continues between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian rebels, despite the ceasefire. A buildup of additional Russian forces is reported along the border. Now, Ukraine has appealed for tough new sanctions and more weapons. And here the Minister of Trade and the Liberal MP for Etobicoke Centre are clearly at odds with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Why are the Liberals leaving the defence of Ukraine to others, just as they're doing in the fight against ISIS terrorists?
Hear, hear. Now the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to answer by a quote, and that's the quote. I believe Canada will be strong and firm in its pressure on Russia. Who said that? The Prime Minister of Ukraine. So that's the point. If the government of Ukraine understands it, I'm sure my colleague will.
Bravo. The honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the U.S. Senate hearing on Canadian fast-tracking of Syrian refugees heard yesterday it would almost be impossible for Canadian officials to acquire the specialized skills needed to screen refugees under the pressure of the Liberal election timeline. My question is for the chair of the Public Safety Committee. This morning, Liberals on that committee blocked a study on refugee security screening. Why is the safety of Canadians not important enough for the committee to study it immediately?
The honourable chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. The committee met for the first time this morning and established a process whereby we'll look at all important issues and determine which ones need to come first, and every issue dealing with the safety and security of Canadians will be considered seriously. Thank you.
The honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this week, a fishing boat called the Jill Marie and its crew ran into trouble off the coast of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. As you know, our oceans can become dangerous for fishermen with unexpected changes in weather. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans explain to the House the response of the Canadian Coast Guard to this crisis situation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries.
Coordination of rescue operations in Halifax responded to the call from the Jill Mary, and help was sent quickly. A frigate was sent by the Coast Guard to rescue the 5 fishermen before the boat sank, and they were taken to their families. There have been over 9,000 rescue missions carried out every year, and we want to recognize the great work done by these people.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, while we recognize this as National Suicide Prevention Week, suicide continues to be a major national public health issue in Canada. In December of 2012, Bill C-300, an act pertaining to a federal framework for suicide prevention, was passed into law. This framework will help the hundreds of Canadians across Canada who are working with some of Canada's most vulnerable people. Can the Minister of Health inform this House as to when we can expect some information as to when this bill will actually be implemented? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for his question, and I thank him also for his tireless advocacy work on behalf of this important issue. I am pleased to inform him that as a result of his work in the past, the Public Health Agency of Canada has been working on the federal framework on suicide prevention. In fact, I have just seen an almost final copy of that framework. I would be happy to meet with the member opposite to discuss it at any time, and we will continue to work to address this very serious matter to prevent suicide in this country.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Governments in the past have chosen conflict over cooperation and unilaterally changed voting rules in a often self-serving manner. With the commitment that October 19th was the last first-past-the-post election, we must now create a voting system that truly respects and reflects the wishes of Canadians. And they expect that the committee tasked with this momentous responsibility must also respect and reflect their wishes. Will the minister agree to our proposal to work with the NDP, the Conservatives, the Bloc, and the Greens, and seize this historic opportunity together?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to make something perfectly clear. The reforms we choose must be designed to address the needs of all Canadians and go far beyond addressing the interests of the parties we represent. I urge all members in this House to adopt the same principle and work with us as we enhance our democratic institutions and serve the best interests of Canadians.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the 150th anniversary of our nation's capital draws near, many of my constituents feel that Ottawa have not received equal treatment from economic development agencies over the last decade to help develop local projects and strengthen the local economy. In fact, Ottawa received less than $1 per capita in federal development agency funding. Can the minister assure my constituents and all residents of Ottawa region that we will be treated fairly when it comes to economic development projects?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for that very important question, Mr. Speaker. The National Capital Region is not just home to an amazing public service, but it's home to a dynamic, innovative, high-tech industry. And I'm working to support startups, scale-ups, and helping high-growth firms in Ottawa and across the country, Mr. Speaker. And we look forward to working in partnership with my colleagues as we gear up to celebrate Canada's 150th anniversary here in the National Capital Region and across Canada.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stats Canada estimates there are over 1 million blind or partially visually disabled Canadians. However, only 7% of literature is available in accessible formats like Braille, large print, and audio formats. The Marrakesh Treaty amends copyright rules to give visually impaired Canadians access to 285,000 accessible books. Now, Mr. Speaker, we recently introduced legislation in the previous Parliament to adopt this treaty here in Canada. That was interrupted by the election. I wonder if the government of the day would consider reintroducing that legislation so it can be passed forthwith.
The Minister for People with Disabilities.
I thank the member opposite for his question. I'm very proud, Mr. Speaker, to support the work of my colleague, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, as he leads our work on the Marrakesh Treaty. Over 1 million Canadians who suffer from vision loss, including myself, really have a necessity to have this kind of alternate format. I'm very proud to be part of a government that triumphs and trumpets accessibility and inclusion, and I look forward to bringing this to the House. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the English media in Canada are getting into the debate over the sale of Rona and saying that the government should do nothing. Rona employs 17,000 people in Quebec, including 1,000 in Boucherville, which is in my riding. That's Also, $2 billion in supplies from Canadian suppliers. The task force on the protection of Quebec business, which included former Liberal Minister Monique Jérôme-Ferger, rightly said that headquarters are economic drivers. So is the minister committed to taking action to protect our jobs?
The Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for the question. As I said yesterday to the member, this is a very important issue, and therefore the Investment Canada Act is very clear when it comes to the net benefit analysis that's done. Because this transaction is close to $3.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, it will automatically trigger a net benefit analysis. We will make sure that we have the appropriate resources and process in place to do the analysis. And like I mentioned before, Mr. Speaker, the Competition Bureau will look at it, the shareholders will look at it, but the bottom line is we will do what's in the best interest of Canadians and Quebecers.
The honourable member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, the government of Quebec, through the Caisse de dépôt, can agree to sell its Rona shares and let the deal go ahead, or refuse to sell them, and that would block the deal. If it does sell them, then there's one thing it can't do, and that is to set conditions that would force Lowe's to fulfill its commitments on the headquarters, jobs, the supply chain, and businesses that depend on it. It's this government that can do those things. Is the minister committed to imposing conditions to protect our businesses and guarantee economic activity in Quebec?
Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member opposite that this government is very committed to making sure that we have strong Canadian businesses from coast to coast to coast. When it comes to this particular transaction, Mr. Speaker, there are clear guidelines set in the Investment Canada Act, the legislative framework that makes it very clear that there's a process in place to deal with these kinds of transactions. The bottom line is jobs are important, making sure that we have the best interests of Canadians is important, Mr. Speaker. So we'll make sure that we follow the process, we have the resources in place, and we'll make sure we do what's good for Quebecers and Canadians.
I would like to point out the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Pierre Paradis, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food of Quebec.
I would also like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Shirley Bond, Minister of Jobs, Tourism and Skills Training, and Minister responsible for Labour in the province of British Columbia. And the Honourable John Rustad, Minister of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation for the province of British Columbia. I believe we have now the regular Thursday question. The member for Regina Capel.
Here. Question everyone's been waiting for, Mr. Speaker. I was just wondering if the government House Leader can update the House on the business for the rest of the week and for the week that we return after our constituency work week.
The Honourable, I'll just give the members a moment. Give the members a moment to clear the chamber, and we'll encourage the whips to make sure they do that in a rapid fashion unless they're going to sit down.